A lot of the times when people are being critical of persons who are doing wrong, they will often take those people who are they're talking about and not pare it down to the most succinct description or of what's going on. They don't make it as condensed as possible. They talk about a larger group that may include people who are not having anything to do with the wrongs that are going on. And as such, you tend to get bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, etc. when you make those comments and you make sure that don't make sure that you're going to eliminate the people who are not part of the group that you're being critical of. So, like Joe Gibson in the chat here, our conservative guy from North Carolina, asks about Jews controlling the media. Are there Jewish people who are CEOs in Hollywood? Sure. Are there Jewish people who own or run banks? Sure. But if your problem is with the people who are bankers, even typically I would say you don't say it's the Jew. You don't blame all Jews for people who are acting unethically in banking. The problem there is that there's been this whole history of equating the global problems with globalists and bankers, whatever, with Jews, that now you've made it so that you can't be critical of banks and banking without coming off as us questioning whether or not you're being anti-Semitic or not. So those people have ruined it for you. But let's talk about like another issue. Like a lot of times people will criticize Israel for what is happening in the Gaza Strip. And I'm critical of Netanyahu and the Israeli government and the Netanyahu administration for what's going on in the Gaza Strip, i.e. the indiscriminate bombing, the going over and what is needed to be done. Because again, after 10/7, the Israeli government should have been considered to have had the authority and the ability, the moral authority, if you will, and the real authority to go after Hamas, because Hamas is the one that made the attack. But Netanyahu, who knew about the attacks beforehand, his government knew about those attacks beforehand, and Netanyahu then allowed them to happen, meaning he allowed Jewish Israelis to die. He allowed Israelis who are Jewish, Christian, Muslim to be kidnapped, to be held hostage, because it's not just Jews that are being held hostage. Different Israelis are being held hostage of different ethnic backgrounds. But when people say Israel is doing these things, maybe pedantically you're being correct, but there are many people in Israel who are actively out there being critical of Netanyahu, protesting Netanyahu, criticizing how Netanyahu has handled the actions post 10/7, how he's basically allowed these people to remain hostages. It's better for Benjamin Netanyahu right now to still have hostages, so he can use that as an excuse to go attack Gaza and try and keep flattening Gaza, because it benefits him politically because of the criminal issues that he's dealing with and alleged to have participated in. But when you come and criticize Israel for doing it, you're criticizing like everyone in Israel. Oh, maybe I didn't mean all Israelis. Well, then you need to be better at talking about and restricting it to the group of people that you're talking about. For example, criticize Benjamin Netanyahu for his actions, criticize the Netanyahu administration, criticize the Israeli government, criticize the Israeli military for bombing the World Hunger Organization owned by the chef. Like, you can criticize the military for failing to follow what should have been proper protocols, or maybe the military for not setting up proper protocols to be able to prevent them from attacking a convoy of aid workers and not just taking them out one by one. But when you broaden who you're talking about and you're making it so that people can question whether or not you're being anti-Semitic or not, it makes it harder on you to make your point. Whereas if you brought it all the way down to just criticizing Netanyahu, criticizing the Israeli government, criticizing the Netanyahu administration. If you made it more specific as to who you're complaining about, then you're less likely to be taken as somebody who is bigoted against those people. I've even done this personally with Bringing It Boy from Blog Talk Radio, where he brought up a good point, and I started to try, when I levy my problems at Republican politicians, I might not always be successful at it, but I try and make sure to levy that response and talk about Republicans in Congress, Republican politicians, Republican senators, to limit the group, to let them know this is who I'm talking about. Like when I'm talking about the wrongdoings that took place within the Catholic Church, you don't just say Catholics did this, because there are plenty of Catholics who had nothing to do with the molestation of kids in the Catholic Church. But if I say I'm talking about, if I'm going to criticize the clergy, I could talk about the clergy or the people within the Catholic Church who covered up sexual misconduct and the harming of children within the Catholic Church, then I'm being more specific, and I'm less likely to be taken as somebody who is blanketly blaming all Catholics for the bad actions of the people in the hierarchy of the church who did those bad actions. Well, if I criticize Republicans in the Senate for what they're doing, then you can be clear that I'm not criticizing anybody else but the Republicans in the Senate. If I'm criticizing the Netanyahu administration, you can be clear that I'm not judging everybody in Israel, I'm just judging the Netanyahu administration. And if you want to be critical of a bad action of a part of a bank, then by all means you could do so. But when you start talking about like globalist and international banking and all that other stuff, it's going to be taken in a way as you're blaming all Jews. And in reality, if you look at the chat and what Joe Gibson said in the chat, you'll clearly see that he asked them, well, don't Jews own the banks? No. Jews as a whole don't own the banks, don't run the banks. Jews as a whole don't run the media. Why would I be sitting here with less than 1,000 subscribers on YouTube if Jews own the media? If Jews as a collective owned the media, you'd think I'd have a bigger show than Hal Sparks right now. Right? If we owned the media, it would be much easier for me to get traction within the media. But we don't. And that's just a line that's used by anti-Semites because they want to be able to scapegoat Jews for the world's problems so that we don't have to look at the anti-Semites and the other white supremacist Nazi type folks and look at what they're doing. It's a nice distraction. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So, if you want to keep on talking about Jews running the world banking or Jews running banks, you are absolutely going to hear it from the Anti-Defamation League, who came out against you and talked about whatever white supremacist, i.e. whatever ties that they believe that you have. Whether or not you have them or not, if you're going to espouse ideas like Jews run the banks, Jews run the media, then people like myself who are Jewish are going to probably look at the ADL and be like, well, maybe there's some merit to what they're saying. Because you're continuing to perpetuate and promote ideas that are used in the subjugation and the marginalization of my people. If you don't want to have that albatross around your neck, you have a responsibility to learn how to be a better person when it comes to dealing with issues pertaining to Jewish people. If you don't want people thinking you as an anti-Semite, don't repeat the lines that are promoted by anti-Semites. Don't allow yourself, if you really, honestly and truly have no problem with the Jewish people and like Jewish people and don't want to see Jewish people marginalized or oppressed, don't allow yourself to be used as a tool of the anti-Semites and the Nazis and everybody else who are promoting these stupid ideas. It's why on my personal page, and I'll also share this on Liberal Dan Radio on Facebook. It's why I gave a post about how there are probably some very good, well-meaning people who want to do things and promote freedom for the Palestinian people. Unfortunately, what some of these people do is they pick up on things that they sound right from groups who are not really for the freedom of the Palestinian people. They want to eliminate all the Jews in the area, like Hamas wants to eliminate all the Jews in the area. So, but they'll see something and think it's a good thing to share, and then they'll share it without understanding, without maybe passing it by somebody who is a friend of theirs who might be Jewish, who might be able to tell them, hey, look, this is why this is problematic. So I've offered that to any of my friends on Facebook. I'll offer that to any of y'all as well. If you want to email me at liberaldanradio@gmail.com and say, hey, I was thinking about sharing this, but I have questions as to whether or not it might be taken as anti-Semitic, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it and give you an explanation. I might even, if it is anti-Semitic, I might share it on my show and be like, this is an example of anti-Semitism that's being spread. I won't give your name. I won't out you as as the person who shared it with me, unless you want to say that you were the person that shared it with me, which is good on you for asking somebody like myself as to whether or not what you might be sharing is anti-Semitic or not. So that shows that you're being responsible, but I understand how some people might want to be private. But I still might bring up the actual thing that was going to be shared, because I'm sure it's being shared by lots of other people too. Other people who don't take the time and the care to question whether or not the things that they're sharing are things that are going to be hurting Jewish people. So, anyway, if you want to, again, and if you watching this video right now want, little feedback, want some help and say, like, is this something that's anti-Semitic or not? I'd be more than, if you don't know any other Jewish people, well, first of all, maybe you should ask yourself why you don't know many other Jewish people. But if you don't know any other Jewish people, but you really want to, share things without seeming like you're an anti-Semitic dickhead, liberaldanradio@gmail.com. Ask me the question. I'd be more than happy to take a peek and give you my view as to why I feel that way. And what are your thoughts? Leave your opinions below. Agree or disagree. Remember to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and as always, have a good day.